Science fiction's always been a bit of a tricky mistress in the land of make-believe. Part of that may be attributed to the fact that most people don't really know what qualifies as good science fiction as opposed to science fantasy. And this is especially applicable in Hollywood, where it becomes less about understanding the genre you're contributing to and more about what's going to sell, rake in the big bucks, or at the very least, break even. For every Neil Blomkamp, we have a J.J. Abrams. For every Mass Effect, we have Phantasy Star. So, which realm of science fiction or fantasy does Transcendence fall under? That's a hard question to answer. This film had interesting ideas and an interesting concept. The problem is that it just didn't do anything with any of those ideas. I mean, it introduced stuff with like various phrases and stuff, like the "oh, you're trying to create a god" stuff, but it just doesn't explore any of it. I mean, the first act was good, where they have the assassination attempt and the time between that and them digitizing Will and all that. That was actually good, because that actually at least was cohesive and actually had a clear thingy. But after the first couple of time skips, and especially during the third act, my suspension of disbelief was just straight up broken when the film tries to equate nanotechnology with a global panacea that can restore limbs or make it rain. I am not kidding, people. I understand that may be a bit of a spoiler, but as soon as I saw that, I was just like, okay, I'm done. This film's officially jumped the shark. I'm sorry, I'm done. Not really, I didn't leave the theater, but that was just the case of, okay, they have no idea what they're doing. And what doesn't really help is that some of the ideas and even some of the characters they add to the story just don't serve a purpose. Some of them are just literally MacGuffins. I mean, the leader of the Rift movement, that's like the whole, that convinces the other scientists to work with them, she was not a likable character, nor was she a very charismatic person. They didn't clearly establish what would cause someone to actually be won over to their side, and it was really stupid. Her character could have just been cut out of the film and it wouldn't have suffered. If anything, it might have been improved. And so that's just another problem, is that some of the stuff is just pointless to the overall film, and even then, if you were to take them out, the film still wouldn't have made that much sense. Now, from a technical standpoint, it at least looks good. The set design, the visual effects, all that stuff looks really good. The world looks very believable. It's just the only real problem with this film is its story. And if your story's not good, then your film's not good. That's just the bottom line. Now, I may sound like I absolutely hated it, but I didn't, because this film kind of suffers from what I like to call the Stephen King effect. Kind of pulls you in, gets you kind of invested, and you think you feel entertained, but then once you're done and you leave the theater, you then start thinking, wait a minute, none of that made any sense. It didn't have like any major disappointing letdowns like in, say, It or The Langoliers, but it was definitely kind of on the same level, where first I thought I enjoyed it, but then as I was leaving the theater, I realized, wait a minute, what did I just watch? None of what happened made any sense whatsoever. That's the best way I can describe this movie. It looks good, it's paced really well, it's got good acting, but just the story is just weak. Starts out strong, but then it just falls apart over time. Like I said, the film looked good and the premise had potential if they did it right. They needed to pick one of the good ideas they introduced and actually develop it instead of touching on all these different things with such broad strokes. So really, I can't recommend seeing this film at full price in theaters. I mean, if you're really curious, wait for it to come to the dollar theaters, but frankly, there are much better science fiction stories that have explored this concept before. I mean, the one comparison everybody kept making when they first saw the trailer was Ghost in the Shell. While I haven't seen Ghost in the Shell, I know, get your gasps out now, an anime fan who hasn't seen Ghost in the Shell, but frankly, I know there are better examples of this type of premise out there. I think the reason why it looked good is because the director, Wally Pfister, was Christopher Nolan's cinematographer. So that definitely really shows the fact that he was good at making it look good, but not very good at actually telling a cohesive story. That really, and knowing that the guy was originally a cinematographer explains a lot. All of that said, I give Transcendence a 3 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Tune in later today for my review of $1 Million Arm. See you then.